Hello everyone, I'm Mona Lisa A. De Ramos, second year college student from Bachelor of Science in Accountancy. My teacher assigned me to make a video reporting, and the topic that was assigned to me is about the critique of traditional free trade theory in the context of developing country experience by Tudor and Smith. Bago nyo po panoorin ang video na ito, ay kailangang napanood nyo na muna ang base ng topic na ito, which is the International Trade Theory and Development Strategy hanggang sa chapter 12.3. So, meron ditong basic assumptions of the traditional neoclassical trade model na dapat suriing mabuti. Lahat ng ito ay ipapaliwanag ko mamaya as I move along. So, una nga dito yung fixed resources, full employment, international factor, immobility. Next is fixed, freely available technology and consumer sovereignty versus product cycle, ongoing development of synthetic substitutes for developing countries' exports, and opportunities for dynamic gains in leading sector. Then, internal factor mobility versus different types of structural rigidities, and for competition versus pervasive market power. And the governmental non-interference in trade versus active trade policies. Second to the last is balanced trade and international price adjustments versus instability. Lastly is trade gains accruing to nationals versus export enclaves with foreign ownership. Distinction between GDP and GNI becomes important. So, simulan natin sa fixed resources, full employment, and the international immobility of capital and skilled labor, and challenged by North-South trade models. So, ito daw ay initial assumption tungkol sa static nature of international exchange. When we say static, hindi nagbabago. So, international exchange ng mga resources daw ay fixed, fully utilized internationally, immobile with product production functions. So, kahit saan ay pareho lang, either north or south. At ito ay centralized ng traditional theory of trade and finance. Pero sa totoong buhay, ang world economy ay mabilis ang pagbabago at ang factors of production ay nananatili pa din ang quantity or quality. Di palaging nakakasabay. Kagaya na lang sa developed countries or ang north. Mabilis ang production kaya madaming napoproduce and maganda ang quality ng product dahil sa mga makabagong teknolohiya na ginagawa nila. Pero sa developing countries, same pa din ang quantity at quality ng product dahil sa kakulangan ng kaalaman sa makabagong teknolohiya. At syempre, may kaalaman nga, ngunit kulang naman ang capital para mag-adapt sa rapid changes ng world economy. At pinoint out ng mga kritiko na ito ay totoo, especially pagdating sa resources. At alam naman natin na ang resources ang pinakamahalaga pagdating sa pagpapalago nito at pagpapaunlad. Kagaya ng physical capital, entrepreneurial abilities, kinakailangan na may sapat na kaalaman. Scientific capacities, ito ay ang abilidad na magkaroon ng technological advancement at pagsasagawa ng pananaliksik tungkol sa kaunlaran. At syempre, pag-upgrade ng technical skills ng mga worker. To summarize, ang North-South trade models ay isang trade and development theories na nakapokus sa unequal exchange between the North-developed countries and the South-developing countries in an attempt to explain why the South gains less from trade than the North. Michael Porter's competitive advantage theory highlights that traditional trade theory applies only to basic factors such as unskilled labor and physical resources, but creation of advanced factors such as knowledge resources and specialized infrastructure is the first priority. Central task is to escape from the straitjacket of factor-driven national advantage. alternative theories, vent for surplus theory. So, sinasabi sa vent for surplus theory, the contention or allegation that opening world markets to developing countries through international trade allows those countries to make better use of formerly underutilized land and labor resources so as to produce larger primary product outputs, the surplus of which can be exported. Kasi 'di ba, hindi nga nakakagawa ng larger product kung walang export. So, dahil di naman pwede mag-produce kung maliit lang yung market, so that exporting can be useful to use the underutilized land and labor. So makakatulong pa siya sa mga employment. As you can see on the figure, there is a y-axis which is the importables or the manufactures, and the x-axis is the exportables or the primary products. The vent for surplus argument can be represented by a shift in production from point V to point B, with trade enlarging the final domestic consumption from V to point C. We see that before trade, the resources of this closed developing world economy were underutilized, and yung production is only occurring at point V, and yung 0x and 0y manufactures were being produced and consumed. At yung opening up of the nation to foreign markets, probably result yun ng colonization, is nag-provide nga ng economic impetus to utilize these idle resources. And karaniwan na nga ng idle resources is yung mga excess of land and labor. At dahil dito, na-expand ang primary product exportable production from 0x to 0x raised to 1 at point B on the production frontier. Fixed freely available technology and consumer sovereignty. Challenged by the product cycle theory, development of synthetic substitutes for developing country exports. So ano ba ito? Dahil sa rapid technological change ay malalim itong nakakaapekto sa world trading relationships. At isa sa obvious na halimbawa ng impact nito sa developed country ay ang technological change. At sa pagde-develop ng kanilang export earnings ay nakadevelop sila ng tinatawag na synthetic substitutes for many traditional primary products. Mula pa noong World War II ay na-develop na ito. Ang synthetic substitutes is commodities that are artificially produced but can be substituted for the natural commodities. Mga example nito is manufactured rubber, cotton, and wool. Ang product cycle naman in international trade, the progressive replacement of more developed countries by less developed countries in the production of manufactures of increasing complexity. International factor mobility, perfect competition and uncertainty, increasing returns, imperfect competition and issues in specialization. Iisa-isahin ko muna yung mga terms na aking nabanggit. International factor mobility. Factor mobility refers to the ability to move factors of production, labor, capital, or land out of one production process into one another. Perfect competition if all firms sell an identical product. And uncertainty, a situation in which neither the actual outcome nor even the precise probabilities of the various possible outcomes are known. Increasing returns, a disproportionate increase in output that results from a change in the scale of production. Imperfect competition. So, kabaligtaran ito ng perfect competition where the product they sell is different. Matatagpuan ito sa type of market structures such as monopolies, oligopolies, monopolistic competition, monopsonies, and oligopsonies. Monopolies, there is only one seller. Oligopoly, there are many buyers but only a few sellers. Monopolistic competition. Example nito ay fast food like McDonald's and Burger King. Although they are in direct competition, they offer similar products that cannot be substituted. Monopsonies, single buyer only. Oligopsonies, example nun ay tobacco company. Under nga nito ay itong tatlo. Una ay structural realities in developing countries. Pangalawa, increasing returns and exercise of monopolistic control over world markets. And last one, risk and uncertainty inherent in international trading arrangements. The absence of national governments in trading relations. Under nito ay definite role for state, industrial policy is crafted by governments, commercial policies instruments such as tariffs, quotas are state constructs, and international policies can result in an even distribution of gains from trade. Balanced trade and international price adjustments. Balanced trade is a situation in which the value of a country's export and the value of its imports are equal. Best example nga nito is yung impact of oil price hikes of the 1970s. Trade gains accruing to nationals. The sixth and final major assumption of traditional trade theory. Enclave economies are promoted by trade. Enclave economies meaning small economically developed regions in developing countries in which the remaining areas have experienced much less progress. Kailangan natin tanggapin sa assumption na ito that factors are internationally immobile. Immobile, walang pagtibo. And we need to examine the implicit notion or kuro-kuro that if developing countries benefit from trade, it is the people of these countries who reap the benefits. So, sa trade gains accruing to nationals, yung difference nga between GDP and GNI becomes important. Yung GDP is measures the value of output generated within defined geographic boundaries, and GNI measures the income actually earned by nationals of that country. So ayan, last slide, some conclusions on trade theory and economic development strategy. First is trade can lead to rapid economic growth under some circumstances. Second is trade seems to reinforce existing income inequalities. Third is trade can benefit developing countries if they can extract trade concessions from developed countries. Second to the last is developing countries generally must trade. Lastly, regional cooperation may help developing countries. So, dito na po nagtatapos ang aking video reporting and thank you for watching!